welcome back to another Storytime video. And today, with college football starting this weekend, there were one or two games that were played last Saturday, and a game or two was played last night, and there's a game or two played tonight, but you guys get the point. College football is back, and it is now different than it was before. In so many different ways, it is different now than it was before. Now, 5 years ago, I talked about and mentioned that my favorite college football team and the college football team that I root for is South Carolina. Now, I will say with that I always prefer there to be great college football games out there, and with some of the changes that are made, I think that there will be some amazing games that wouldn't have happened otherwise, and there are certainly some interesting games probably in the postseason that will happen that I have no idea the teams that are going to play yet, because, it's just week one. I can guess and predict all that I want to. I could do that all day. I have an hour of footage recorded for this. I could talk about this for the whole hour if I wanted to. But that's not the point here. The point here is talking about the changes and what I think about them. Now, I think that the 12-team playoff is going to be a wonderful, wonderful thing. Now, I don't necessarily think that there are 12 teams that are worthy or that can win a national title every year, or hardly any year in general, except for maybe 2007. But, I think that in most years there are, I think in most years there are more than 4 teams that could win a national title. Like last year, I think Oregon could have won a national title, or at least competed for one, had they not lost to Washington twice. And of course, you can make the argument like, hey, you lose to the same opponent twice, and it really doesn't matter. And of course, you have that whole Florida State thing, which was kind of stupid on their part. Like, play the darn bowl game, man. Play the bowl game, finish off your season, and do it right. Don't just pout and moan and complain. Every single team throughout the 4-team playoff that has finished 5th has had a case and is, in some cases, deserving. Like, Baylor and TCU in 2014 probably deserved to be in the playoff. But you know what? They didn't pout and moan and complain, and TCU, in particular, went out there and they blew out Ole Miss, an SEC team, in their bowl game. Apparently a bowl game that doesn't matter according to Florida State, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, there's going to be a team that finishes 13th in the final polls as well. It'd be funny and hilarious if that were Florida State this year, but I don't. Anyway, so in terms of conferences and realignment and all this other stuff, I think that this wave of conference realignment and stuff makes less sense than it did the first time, like a decade and a half ago when it was going on the first time. because it's like, aside from money, which I know it's just money, but aside from money, you can't tell me in any way, shape, or form that Stanford and Cal being part of the Atlantic, that's right, the Atlantic Coast Conference. Yes, that's right. Two teams from California are put in the same conference as teams from Florida and New York. So, I just wanted to let that sink in for a second. Now, the fact that the geometry makes no sense and that it's just for money is the main reason, or basically the only reason, why I don't really like the new college football and all the changes that have been made to it over the past few years. Now, I don't like that the Pac-12 is no longer a thing, at least not the way that it used to be. I mean, Washington State and Oregon State are operating as the Pac-2 or something like that. But aside from that, I mean, it's the Pac-12 is just not the same anymore. And I'm not against change, but make the change make sense, like with geometry and stuff. Like, look, I get that Stanford and Cal would rather go to the ACC because they have more money there and can earn more money there than the Mountain West. And I totally get that. That's why I said, aside from money, I don't see a way that Stanford and Cal playing in the same conference as Miami and Syracuse makes sense. I mean, heck, it's bad enough that USC, again, California, UCLA, Los Angeles. Well, both teams are Los Angeles, but them, Nebraska, and Penn State, those four teams are all in the same conference. And no, I'm not calling for it to go back to, well, I'm not necessarily calling for Nebraska to go back to the Big 12 like they were in 15 years ago, or USC and UCLA to go back to the Big 10, or, you know, even Penn State to go independent. I'm not wanting that necessarily. It just doesn't make sense from a geography perspective. Although I will say, now, I think I've said pretty much everything I want to say in terms of that. But I will say that Arizona and Arizona State and Utah and Colorado going to the Big 12, yes, that makes sense. And you can justify Colorado going back to the Big 12 that they were in like 15 years ago. But so some of the geography makes sense. And I think that's part of the reason why I don't flat out or don't really dislike it any more than I do. Because, I mean, some of it makes sense, and it's not like Georgia is about to be part of, you know, the Big Ten or a Western Conference or whatever. I mean, there's some semblance and some order, and it's not just totally chaotic. So I think that that's how I've been able to accept it, even though I will die on the hill that it makes no sense that Stanford and Cal are part of the Atlantic Coast Conference. I will die on that hill. I can't change that. And I realize that. So I guess I won't die on that hill, but in terms of it not making sense from a geography perspective, I always point to that first. But, yeah, so in terms of the new 12-team playoff, I saw where the schedule for the playoff got announced, and it's going to be and by the way, these first round playoff games are going to take place on college campuses, and oh, I am so extremely excited. I am so extremely excited for it. Oh my god. And then one thing I really like about it is that the New Year's Six, so the Fiesta Bowl, the Peach Bowl, the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl, and the Cotton Bowl will all be playoff games. Now, I'll get to the the quarterfinals and the semifinals here in a minute, but the first round playoff games played between teams 5 through 12. Teams 5 through 8 will host. So, team that's ranked number 5 will host number 12. Team that's ranked 6 will host 11. Team that's 7 will host 10. 8 will host 9. You know, so that's how it'll go. And with the 4 first-round games, one of them will take place on December 20th. And then the rest of the 3 will take place on December 21st. And so, first round, 1 game Friday, December 20th. And then the other 3 first-round playoff games, Saturday, December 21st. So 2 weeks after conference championship games have concluded. But I believe, I don't know if we will have a team that plays in conference championship game week that, well, maybe aside from that group of 5 team, but those teams will still have 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks, 3 probably, to prepare and get ready for their first round playoff game. And then the quarterfinals, which it goes on a rotating basis. So 4 of the 6, well, it'll go on a rotating basis like it has the past 10 years. So this year, the quarterfinals, there's going to be 1 December 31st, and then the rest of the 3 are going to take place on January 1st. And I don't know if 2 games would ever be held on New Year's Eve and 2 games would be held on New Year's Day, or if it's going to still be 1 game on New Year's Eve and 3 on New Year's Day. I don't know about future years. All I know about is this current year, this current season, and how it's going to, and how the postseason is scheduled. So, December 31st, we have the Fiesta Bowl. And then January 1st, we have the Peach Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl. And so those are your playoff games for the quarterfinals. So there's going to be the top 4 teams that have a bye that won't have to play a first round. And, of course, the winners of the first round will play those teams that had a bye in the quarterfinals, which those games will be held at those bowl games and not at those college campuses. So yeah, and then the semifinals will be held about the time when the national championship game used to be played. So the national championship game typically used to be played the second Monday of January. Well, I think one year it was the 15th, so maybe, well, that was the third Monday if that was that year. But anyway, so uh uh anyway, so about this time they used to hold the national title. So the semifinals this year are going to be the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl. The Orange Bowl will be played on the 9th, and then the Cotton Bowl will be played on the 10th. And personally, I like having both semifinal games on 2 different days because that means that you get to play one game and then you have the other game the next day. Uh, and then so I think, well, next year I think it'll be the Fiesta Bowl and the Peach Bowl as the semifinal games, and the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl will be quarterfinal games, and then in 26, the semifinals will be the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. Now, I don't know how well, I think the Rose Bowl is okay with that because I think we were waiting on the Rose Bowl to say, hey, we will be a quarterfinal and a semifinal, and we will agree to all this and all that. So, because I know that they like to have their game played on January 1st, but with this new 12-team playoff format, I think that every third year from now on, the game will not be played on January 1st. So 26 and I think 29 and then I think 32 after that. The Rose Bowl will probably not be played on January 1st. And then the national title game, which I believe will be played on Martin Luther King Day, is going to be January 20th. And so that is when we will determine our new, unless Michigan repeats, college football champion. And I was going to hold off judgment about, I had heard about a playoff game, a first round playoff game taking place on that Friday, but rumors are just that. They are rumors for a reason. And I wanted to see something official, and I found it on Fox College Football. They shared that schedule, and I found it, and I think that is an official source, and I like that this is how it's structured because I didn't know how the quarterfinals and the semifinals were going to be structured. I am a visual learner where somebody can tell me something all day, but if somebody shows me something, then I'm going to understand it better if it's shown to me, as opposed to told to. And so when I am able to look at it and see it right in front of me, then I'm able to understand it better, and I really like it. I really like the 12-team format, and I believe every Power 4 conference champion is going to get a bye. So I believe every conference champion, at least Power 4, that being SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and ACC champion will get a first round bye. I believe so. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I believe that they will. And then I know for a fact that the highest ranking group of 5 team will make it into the playoff. Like, Liberty would have made it into the playoff and probably played a team like, they probably would have gotten the 12 seed and then played Florida State, which, by the way, that matchup should have actually happened in real life this past January. Well, late December, early January, instead of Liberty and Oregon and Florida State and Georgia. We should have had Florida State, Liberty, and Georgia against Oregon. Those 2 games would have been far more entertaining. But, yeah. So, I mean, if you remember those UCF teams that... Sorry, my throat's dry now. That had 2 straight undefeated regular seasons. Yeah, both of those teams definitely would have made it into the playoff. And they might have actually hosted a playoff game against maybe a team like Penn State in 2017 or somebody like that. Or maybe Ohio State would have hosted Central Florida because I think I said Central Florida. Might have said TCU. But yeah, I meant Central Florida when talking about Group of 5. But yeah, in 17, I mean, if Central Florida would have been a 12 seed, then they would have had to play in Columbus. And that would have been a heck of a game. I mean, watching Mackenzie Milton against that Ohio State defense, that would have been a heck of a game. But yeah, just those exciting matchups is part of the reason why I'm really excited for this new 12-team playoff. I mean, I hate that the Pac-12 had to die. Kinda. I mean, that's just a side effect of everything going on, but I hate that the Pac-12 had to die throughout all this. But, I mean, those 12 teams will be just fine. Maybe not so much Oregon State or Washington State, but the other 10 will be just fine, I'm sure. And see us, guys. I do believe that will do it for this Storytime video. And select Storytime video. I will see you all later. Goodbye, guys. Thank you all for watching. And